Thank you very much, Jim. If you want to hear my Howard Stern story, maybe during the discussion after the talk, you'll get a little bit of that. Welcome to the land above the notches here in our beautiful state of New Hampshire. Here's a photograph of the lake behind the hotel for those of you who haven't had a chance to go swimming yet. Let's see, 4 months ago, and this is actually going to undermine Jim's introduction, where he actually characterized me as an expert, because 4 months ago, I was plucked out of service and put into the game. I was living in obscurity. I wasn't even here in New Hampshire, and I was appointed by Governor Hassan of New Hampshire as the state's consumer advocate. And that put me in a really difficult position because I had to get up to speed on all of the important things that were happening in the field of public utilities here in New Hampshire. And nothing was more important at the time than an ongoing docket about whether New Hampshire should become the very last state in New England to adopt an energy efficiency resource standard. Now, it's important to remember what an energy efficiency resource standard really is, because we have had ratepayer-funded energy efficiency in New Hampshire for many, many years now. We fund it through a system benefits charge, and basically what our utilities, as the energy efficiency deploying entities, do is they take the money that flows through the system benefits charge at a specified level, and they spend it on cost-effective energy efficiency. So switching over to an energy efficiency resource standard means specifying how much energy efficiency we really expect to achieve in our state as a percentage of our utility sales. So I was brought into this game in the 9th inning. This proceeding had been going on for almost 2 years, and I show up in February, and the deadline for filing a settlement agreement is just a few weeks away. So what do I do, being the proverbial deer in the headlight? Well, I was very lucky because it turns out that my former student, Brian Buckley, works for the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, and he reached out to me, and he very kindly offered to brief me about where we were in the game. You know, just like the manager of the Red Sox comes out and tells the relief pitcher what he needs to do, I got my marching orders from Brian Buckley. And one of the things that I figured out immediately was a problem was that our electric utilities were insisting, in exchange for going along with this energy efficiency resource standard, that they would get a so-called LRAM. Isn't that a horrible acronym? LRAM stands for Lost Revenue Adjustment Mechanism. And through Brian, I became acquainted with some thoughts that had been shared by Rich Sedano of the Regulatory Assistance Project, and also Marty Kushler from the ACEEE, and they're concerned about the LRAM, and I forget which one of them said, you know, the more the utilities want it, the more you should object to it as the consumer advocate. Why? Because an LRAM makes up the utilities for their theoretically lost revenue, regardless of whether they actually whether they've actually lost it or not. So I learned from Marty Kushler that a much better idea is revenue decoupling. This idea that you establish the utilities revenue requirement and you make sure they earn that and only that, because anything beyond the revenue requirement is by definition windfall. So I made it my business as the consumer advocate in New Hampshire, newly appointed, to pound my shoe on the table in these very ponderous, boring negotiating sessions and demand that, in fact, our utilities agree to revenue decoupling. Well, I would like to tell you that this story is an inspirational profile in courage, but in fact, it's not an inspirational profile in courage. All I extracted from the utilities was a promise that after 3 years of LRAM, they would agree to propose to our commission a revenue decoupling mechanism in their very next rate case after the first 3 years of our EERS that doesn't start until 2018. That's when I first got into this business back in 1999, my boss said, anytime you get anything out of the utilities, go home and declare victory. So I went home after I got that, and I declared victory. But already in my 4 months on the job, as a result of that kind of struggle, I have learned a few things about what the public policy impediments to integrated, fully aggressive, all cost-effective energy efficiency really are. Here is the first one. People like me need to summon a lot of courage. My job expires on November 5th, 2019, and I could spend every single day between then and now worrying about whether I get reappointed. My two predecessors did not get reappointed. One got renominated, not confirmed. My immediate predecessor didn't get reappointed. Their immediate predecessor, 3 consumer advocates ago, she opted to take a new job rather than go through that ordeal. But the fact is that if you are a consumer advocate, if your job is my job to represent the interests of residential utility customers in public utility regulatory forums like the PUC and the FERC, energy efficiency is absolutely the hill worth dying on. I will expend every cent of whatever political capital I have fighting for every ounce of cost-effective energy efficiency that I can get for my constituents. Why is that? Because I have seen a slide that one of the utilities put up a few months ago at a meeting I was at that says that energy efficiency is the cheapest resource we can possibly provide to consumers. The number they put up is 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour. That's just the best thing that money can buy for our customers. Plus, energy efficiency has this awesome appeal right across the ideological spectrum. You know, whether you're a free market Republican who believes in, you know, the lavish high life of the sort that you can have here at this hotel, or whether you're a person who's grievously worried about the future of climate change, the fact is that squeezing as much work per unit of energy out of every energy we consume is good business, it's good public policy, and all it takes really is the courage of people like me to stand up to those who don't want to really educate themselves about energy efficiency and are not willing to transcend the ideological barriers. It's what the people deserve, all cost-effective energy efficiency. Okay, here is where I bite the hand that feeds the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. The fact is that the second impediment, and it hurts to say this, it really does, because I know the people who work in energy efficiency at our regulated utilities in New Hampshire. A bunch of them are right in this room, and they are all really fabulous people. To a person, they're all dedicated, they're smart, they're kind, they're just really good employees of their utilities. They should be working for somebody else, though, because the fact is that utility delivery of energy efficiency is not as good as what they do in Maine and Vermont, meaning having a third-party deliverer of energy efficiency services like Efficiency Maine or Efficiency Vermont. And this is an example of why it is. I mean, look at this as the marketing campaign for energy efficiency in New Hampshire. I mean, if you didn't know it was about energy efficiency, what would you think it is? Like maybe a bank or a college loan fund or maybe some kind of an insurance plan, right? We need something much more aggressive and interesting and in your face. And the reality is we don't ask McDonald's to go out and convince people that they need fewer hamburgers. Likewise, it is really almost an impossible thing to ask utilities to go out and convince their customers that they need to use less energy. I was feeling ambivalent about saying any of this, but then I went to the New Hampshire Business Roundtable event that happened downstairs yesterday evening, and I saw a really great example of that where there was an account executive from our biggest electric utility in New Hampshire, and he told these stories about how he works with the biggest commercial and industrial customers his utility has in New Hampshire, and he runs out of ratepayer-funded energy efficiency programs to offer them sometime in February. And so the question became, well, why don't you turn around and tell all those companies that you're working with that they should be fighting a public policy fight in order to get more ratepayer-funded energy efficiency into New Hampshire? And he basically said, well, I'm just an account guy. I don't really get involved in the policy stuff. And he kind of tossed it across the room to the policy guy in the room from his employer. And the policy guy said, well, there's only so much we could do in the energy efficiency resource standard docket, and he made it out like it was a limit that was imposed on him him, when in fact it is a limit, these limitations that his employer, along with the other utilities in New Hampshire, were insisting upon. I mean, it's a problem not because the people who do energy efficiency at our investor-owned utilities are not good at what they do. It's a problem because these people are siloed, and at the corporate level, these companies are not fighting all the fight that they could fight in order to really achieve all cost-effective energy efficiency. So what would I do? Would I just, well, I would actually take a leap, I think, beyond what New Hampshire, or what Vermont and Maine did, and I would actually look to the New Deal for my answer. I noticed that the great triumph of the New Deal was the network of rural electric cooperatives that we have in this great country of ours, and I would give all electric and gas customers the benefits of having customer-owned entities that deliver to them energy efficiency services, distributed energy, distributed generation services, consumer engagement platforms, and also the kind of deep energy retrofits. And it's worked in the territories that the investor-owned utilities refused to wire up during the New Deal, and I think it could work for massive deployment of energy efficiency in an integrated way. Okay, here is the last thing I want to show you. This is one of my, right up there with Howard Stern, one of my great heroes. This is Mr. Piggly Wiggly, and we have a lot to learn from Mr. Piggly Wiggly and his inventor. 100 years ago this year, Mr. Piggly Wiggly was invented by a guy named Clarence Saunders. Does anybody here know what Clarence Saunders invented by way of giving the world Mr. Piggly Wiggly? Anybody have any idea? Well, it's not common in this part of the country. Clarence Saunders, yes? Right, it is a grocery chain. Clarence Saunders, 100 years ago, invented the self-service supermarket. Before Clarence Saunders came along, buying groceries looked like what you saw in the TV series Petticoat Junction, or what you see in old westerns. You sidle up to a counter in a store and you ask Mr. Drucker for a pound of, or 10 pounds of flour and some bacon and whatever other grocery items you want. Clarence Saunders got this idea that really it would be much more efficient to have customers pass through a turnstile, walk up and down the shelves, take the stuff they wanted off the shelves themselves, put them in a cart, and at the end of the journey, take the stuff out of the cart, put it out on the counter, and have the checkout person ring it up. And this revolutionized food retailing. But Clarence Saunders did not go around Memphis delivering white papers and power talks about how efficient and valuable his innovation was going to be, how much it was going to positively affect prices of groceries, and how it was going to help people be better, more efficient, more savvy shoppers. Instead, he put signs up all over Memphis that just said, Piggly Wiggly is coming. And he got people excited with his edgy, aggressive, and fundamentally fascinating campaign to get people's attention. That's what we need to do with energy efficiency. In that spirit, we need to rebrand energy efficiency as a form of rebellion and consumer empowerment. We need to send people a message that it's cool, fun, and even a little bit transgressive. Because when people embrace it as the transgressive thing that it really is, a form of living well as the best revenge, then I predict there'll be massive adoption of energy efficiency at the scale that we're only now just beginning to imagine. So that's my pitch: courage and transgression.